morning and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Uh, for another edition of the New England Chapter Connects. My name is Marilee Enos, and I'm the director of the UNHT2 Center. We are the home of New Hampshire's LTAP program, and I participate with the New England APWA Education Committee. Our topic for today is Growing the Future, the role of data and community urban tree management. Today's special almost Arbor Day edition of Chapter Connects will focus on innovative urban tree management in New Hampshire communities. Our presenters will discuss how they've used GIS data to prioritize tree planting, as well as how they've blended digital tools with community initiatives. They'll share practical insights into balancing community development with tree preservation. Just a couple of things before we get started, though. I want to first give a special thanks to our APWA New England chapter sponsors. Without their support, we could not bring all of the valuable programs and events to our members in the public works community. All chapter events are made possible because of generous sponsor support. Their continued investment in our chapter is very important. So thank you so much to our chapter sponsors. We hope that you will find the New England Chapter Connect series worthwhile, informative, and a good way to stay connected. This is our second session of the Spring 2025 series, and our third 2025 webinar, Public Works Advocacy and Visibility, Be a Voice, will be held on May 29th. You can register for this webinar by clicking on the link in the chat. If you missed a session or you would like to replay a session for your staff, all of the New England Chapter Connects webinars can be found on the New England Chapter website. Lastly, please visit the newengland.apwa.org website for more information on becoming an APWA member, upcoming New England Chapter Connect sessions, and becoming an APWA sponsor. Now, let's get right to today's session. Today, we'll be hearing from two communities, including from Tito Sanchez, GIS Manager with Beta Group, and Max Wader with the Arborist Foreman at the City of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, as well as Kelly Coetsier, who is with Manchester. He's their Parks Operations Manager. And we also have a couple other folks from Beta Group that will be joining Tito, including Emily Slotnick, as well as their vendor and partner, Russell Clark. So I'm going to go ahead and first we're going to turn it over to Max, and he is going to walk us through some exciting things happening in Portsmouth.
Great. Thank you, Mary Lee, and good morning, everybody. Thank you to you all for having me, and thank you to the New England APWA for having this chat today. Perfect timing for Arbor Day. So I'm going to share my screen here. And yeah, let's get going. So hello, everybody. My name is Max Wader. I'm the Arborist Foreman for the City of Portsmouth, New Hampshire Public Works. My presentation today, titled Fostering Growth of the Community and Urban Forest Through State Trees, will cover pretty much all of the primary tree management program topics that we really go through, and how we engage our community through that process. So for me, I've been the Arborist Foreman for the last 3 years. I have, previous to that, been the guy in the bucket or the guy in the climbing saddle taking care of our trees, out in the field. So for the last 3 years, it's been a really fun process, learning the ins and outs of the public works and how it all operates on the upstairs level, I guess, if you will. So there are 4 members of our tree crew, including myself, and we maintain over 15,000 trees across the city right of way, of course, where our street trees reside, but also our parks, our city-owned lots, and other spaces like where City Hall and our fire stations are, but also outdoor open spaces like our off-leash dog parks. And before we really get into it today, I have a brief agenda here. So first, I'll frame how we engage our community and discuss those systems in place that allow us to take care of these trees in the urban setting. And then after, I'll broadly cover our management program, including tree maintenance, tree preservation, and our tree planting and establishment program. And then after that, I'll discuss our digital tree inventory, its utility and the circumstances surrounding its creation, and obviously the benefits that it provides to our residents. And then finally, I'll talk about 400 for 400, which was a large-scale community engagement project to celebrate Portsmouth's 400th year of incorporation. So yeah, let's just get right into it. So I think trees in the right-of-way are critical to healthy communities and are really at the intersection of residential and municipal interest. And this image that I created up here on the right kind of shows where that cross-section is, and it's right there in the right-of-way space. Really, I think of those two outer circles as sort of two distinct spaces. On the right, you obviously have our city infrastructure, like roads and sidewalks, but also those are the spaces where the utility lines are, Underground utilities also exist through there as well. But then on the left is where people have their homes, right? They walk on those sidewalks, they play with their friends and kids in the front yards, they park their cars there. So keeping that sort of residential lens in mind, I sort of see that as more of an extension to their front yards as opposed to an extension to our roads or sidewalks. It's really this living, breathing place where so much occurs, right? And what's great about the community where I work is that people are really passionate about trees. So I work from 7 to 3:30 daily, and I can't see every single tree in a given day, but when those residents wake up or when they come home from work, they see that same tree every single day. So if they see something is going on, we have these reporting systems in place, such as See-Click Fix or ViewWorks. I'm sure some of you are very familiar with those applications, which obviously generate those requests into work orders and get delivered straight to me. But also, residents have no problem directly communicating with me. My information is plastered all over the city website, and I also hand out a bunch of business cards. So, and then there's also indirect communication, which is kind of more how I operate. We leave public notices all across the city, and on my next slide, I'll show you some examples of that. And in 2013, so another sort of mechanism for us, we have our urban forestry ordinance, which was established in 2013, but it also replaced a previous tree ordinance. And in this new updated 2013 version, there's more explicit language given so that Public Works is more responsible for the trees in these right-of-way spaces. And also through that city ordinance, the Trees and Public Greenery Committee was sort of bolstered after the rewriting of that urban forestry ordinance. And this committee, it's 10 members, 2 of which aren't city residents, and that's myself and then the state urban forester who also sits on the committee. Everybody else is a resident of the city, or they're, in addition to that, they could be industry professionals or they're appointees from, through city council or mayorally. So there's really no shortage of interfacing with the public in these spaces. So as far as that indirect communication I spoke about, these are sort of the 3 primary examples I can give you. So on the left there, that's our emerald ash borer sort of identification poster. For those, obviously, I'm sure many of you know, but EAB is a non-native pest that's destroying a lot of our native ash trees. And what we would do with this poster is we would actually nail it right to an ash tree we've already designated for removal. So the community and the residents can kind of pass by this tree and see that there's this big sign there, and sort of educating and doing that public outreach. And I would get many calls after these would go out about residents and their private trees in their backyard, and help identifying a potential EAB infested ash tree. And then in the center there is a tree removal notice, which we, according to our city ordinance, we are required to affix that to every tree we are considering for removal at the next Trees and Public Greenery Committee. And that has to be on the tree 7 days previous, 7 days before that meeting is held. And people will write in or call and express their concern about the tree's removal, or kind of agree with the notion of tree removal. And then on the right is sort of a front and back of our tree planting door hanger that we had created for this spring. It really kind of spells out what the commitment for residents is, which is nothing, and then what the city will do, which is essentially take care of this tree in perpetuity, and then all of the additional benefits and things that trees provide are there too. So really broadly, why are these trees community and city assets? Well, the one I hear most often from our residents is bolded at the top of the list, and it's a tree's ability to sequester carbon through the process of photosynthesis. And that's really important for us too in the city, because we have all these climate resiliency plans and sort of making preparations for our changing climate. And a big part of that is focusing on tree planting and establishing, and then just general tree care as well. Obviously, some of these other items here are really important too, such as urban heat mitigation. I think that's something that's really there's a lot of focus on that right now. And luckily, our city is pretty well covered, but there are some like urban hotspots in our downtown areas that's really hard to plant trees into. But obviously groundwater absorption, erosion mitigation, reduction of air and noise pollution, increases to biodiversity, improvements in mental health, and urban beautification are kind of the other top ones in my mind. So yeah, so trees in those right-of-way spaces, or street trees, I guess, they absolutely require more maintenance than other trees across our city properties, like in parks, for example, or even woodlots. And this is most notably probably due to the environmental stressors that these trees are always up against, I would say. And we could group these as just abiotic stressors, right? These aren't necessarily living elements, but they for sure make a pretty big impact on a tree's vigor and health. Things like impervious surfaces, you know, those roads and sidewalks, right? Those do a really good job at shedding water away from the root zone of these trees. But also in the middle of summer, with all of our heat and drought, right? That if there was ever any rainfall kind of through that middle of summer, some of that water is getting shedded away by those impervious surfaces. And obviously those impervious surfaces will retain or reflect heat around. So it just generally keeps a warmer area, and it has that potential to more dry out and not allow moisture to enter that root zone or soils. And also, speaking of soils, we have some pretty poor soil composition in our right-of-way spaces. The sand silt clay ratio is typically wrong. These areas are pretty well compacted too. Think like people parking in those right-of-way spaces, or a lot, you know, just walking will over time also do that. And then just a general nutrient deficiency, right? Like there's no decomposition of anything at that sort of top level of your soil. Think like the opposite of that would be a woodlot, right? Where you have leaf litter and branches and other things just decomposing and becoming like available over that process of degradation and all that. And furthermore, you know, think mechanical damage, right? That's absolutely an abiotic stressor. You have a person with a weed whacker kind of trimming around the base of a tree, and they just keep hitting that same buttress root over and over and over again, which will create a wound, which has the potential to stress out the tree. But also underground mechanical damage, like when someone needs to put in a new gas line or new water line for their house, all of those severed roots absolutely causes mechanical damage. And all of these sort of abiotic stressors or environmental stressors manifest in a generally declined tree. Things like, you know, excessive deadwood or early leaf dropping is just clear signs that the tree is struggling due to these environmental stressors. But what's compounding that issue is oftentimes these trees are way more susceptible to biotic stressors, which are more on your living end of things, think pests and disease. So it really just, it takes off. It's like this snowball rolling down a hill, and it just, those problems just keep mounting and getting bigger and bigger for the tree. And so ultimately, you know, there's no necessarily maintenance to do on that tree other than just removing it and getting something else in there. So at least as far as our right-of-way trees, you know, they absolutely just require more maintenance. And they present more hazards due to the fact that these trees are in these spaces, right? With people walking underneath them, cars parked underneath them. We call those targets, right? So the more targets there are for this potential, you know, dead branch or dead lead or whatever the case is, the hazard, the risk rating raises. And it, you know, that's why we spend so much time in those right-of-way spaces taking care of those trees. Other maintenance ideas here at the bottom. So retrenchment pruning, we typically do these for a more older, just older trees that need to be reduced. So their canopy, if we reduce their overall living canopy by about 50%, we make sure the tree has enough to sort of enough to continue that process of just creating more nutrients for itself to sustain. But what's really important about that retrenchment pruning is that we are creating a scenario where there is more root mass providing the same nutrients and water for a tree that has, you know, a much smaller canopy. So it's a really nice, like, just injection of you know, vigorous potential there. We also brew and apply our own compost tea. So we take decomposing wood chips and extract all of those nutrients and minerals into water. And we add other water soluble components as well. And we then go and apply this with our deep root injection guns. And we do like downtown tree pits, right? That soil is pretty rough and nutrient deficient. But we also apply this to all of our recently planted trees, and as well as all declining trees. And we also practice tree protection practices, especially during construction projects. So I guess the big takeaway that I want you to consider for tree preservation, especially through construction, is that you really have to get that on the books as soon as possible. You want to make sure that if you have a tree that's desirable and you want that to be saved through construction, you get in there and have that be a part of like the bid packet say. If you get 2 years down the line and you're trying to then incorporate tree preservation practices, that's going to be a change order. That's going to be an additional cost. So it's just so much easier and makes more sense to have that be in front of everybody right at the jump. And for us, at least connecting this back to sort of that public lens or that residential lens, many people see the true cost of a project as, what big trees have to be removed. And it could be, however many dollars, right? But if you have to remove a large, 40-inch DBH tree, people will never see that again in that exact location in their lifetime. So people really have a strong passion to preserve all these big trees across our city. And this is just, tree protection in practice, right? So I'm not going to go through every one of these points, but the kind of two critical things that I will say, other than just making sure people understand you want to preserve these trees at the beginning of the planning stages of a project, would be, establish a critical root zone, right? This is essentially an area underneath the drip line of the tree or greater, where you set up like snow fence or something, and the contractors won't be able to then utilize that space for material storage or putting their machinery when they're not using it. And that really relates back to sort of those environmental abiotic stressors, right? Like we don't want that soil to be compacted. We don't want there to be this potential for, these machines to take a swipe at the base of this tree. And now there's this huge wound, right? Like we want to preserve these trees. So we do that by establishing what's known as a critical root zone. And also for, before, during, and after that project, it's really important to just keep those trees well nourished and watered. Again, relating back to those abiotic stressors, right? Like if this tree is, receiving as much water and nutrients as it can, the potential for it to sort of sustain itself through that project and afterward, if there is any damage, is much greater. You have a much greater chance of the tree making a better recovery if you're taking care of it and those needs there. And also, I'll just say too, it's absolutely worth hiring a certified arborist for something like this. There are the ANSI A300 standards for tree care. They will know that stuff very well. They'll be able to guide you through establishing something like a critical root zone and really coming up with a tree preservation plan that goes before, during, and after this construction. So this is just a quick example here. So this is the Vaughan Mall in downtown Portsmouth. So on the left-hand side of the photo there's about 6 oak trees, and they're, you can see up sort of in the canopy here or in the crown here that this tree is already declining. Many of these are. And the scope of the project, the work here is that there are many underground utilities that need to be replaced, and they sort of run through the center currently. But the idea here is these 6 oak trees will be removed, and then that will allow us to sort of localize all of the soil disturbance more on the left-hand side of Vaughan Mall, whereas on the right-hand side, we have some large honey locusts and crab apples. And actually, this is probably the largest city tree in downtown Portsmouth. This will allow us to better attempt at preserving these trees on the right if we know a lot of this disturbance will be occurring on the left-hand side. And obviously, you can see there's some really small sort of garden space here. We're going to be installing our tree protection pretty much where there's pervious surface. So that's all soil and mulch. That's where we will be installing this protection zone. So what happens when we can no longer preserve a tree? Well, we likely remove it, right? And then we plan on replacing those trees with some of our bare root that we plant. We plant 150 every spring. So again, new sites we find locations for previous tree removals, and we're always coordinating with the residents. So if they have a preferred species that could go in somewhere, we'll try and acquire some of those and make that happen for them. And otherwise, we're planting species that tolerate all of those abiotic factors, right? All of those abiotic stressors, things that do well in all kinds of soil, that do well through drought, do well with heat or pollution. So we really try and incorporate native, improved native, and then just other species from other locations across the country. And at least for us, we like to, water these trees for 2 years between through spring, summer, and fall. We'll water them once a week. We'll maintain those mulch rings, and then we'll maintain the staking and chain locking for as long as possible, or until until it's no longer needed and the roots are properly established. And then 4 to 5 years after that, we spend a lot of winters just doing structural pruning. And I sometimes look at trees that are 30 or 40 years old, potentially, right, with a significant structural issue that could have taken someone like me 30 seconds to solve back, if we go back in time. So just to ensure proper tree structure in the long run, it's really important to revisit those trees and do some proper structural pruning. This is a picture from April 2nd, when we received our shipment of bare root trees from Schichtel's nursery in upstate New York. And as you can see, they come in trash bags. Their roots are covered in what's known as cellulose gel, which just clings to those roots and keeps them wet while we're waiting to plant them. Those lights go out, the heat's turned off. We really don't want those trees to start pumping out their leaves or buds prematurely before they're in the ground. So yeah, if without that storage space, we likely wouldn't be bare root tree planting. So how do we, one of our tools in managing our city trees is the digital tree inventory that we've been working on for the past couple of years. And it's a really significant tool, right? Like, it's just really helpful to be able to sort and look on your computer as to what you have across the city. So for example, with emerald ash borer, right, it's super easy for us to just type in fraxinus or ash, and it'll filter all the other trees out and just show us our ash trees, as opposed to just driving around aimlessly trying to canvass the city. It's really easy to see that at a glance. And what was kind of born from our digital tree inventory was the Portsmouth Public Tree Viewer. It's literally just a basic web page where a resident can just click on one of those nodes and see essentially what that tree is, the last time we inspected it, any of those completed work orders that we have for it. So it just gives them some more context, a little bit of a history, and then just knowing what they have is really important to them. For us, so establishing that the tree inventory was kind of a bit of a process. We initially tried to go with one of those sort of larger off-the-shelf products where we would have to purchase a license for it for a few years, but it was just way too expensive. And so what we opted to do was build it in-house with an ArcGIS sort of suite. And with the help of a GIS technician upstairs, we were able to import data that we collected back in 2010. So it's all very outdated, but it's mostly there. Some of those elements, we just, whenever we complete work for the city, we will add a work order. And after that, we will kind of take stock in that tree. So if we need to update any of those vital pieces of information for the inventory, we'll do that then. Otherwise, we have summer interns that will come and help us canvass larger areas of the city, like an entire street or a park, for example. This is just, I won't go too in depth on this, but these are just sort of the things that what we add to our inventory, right? So each site is represented by a node, and then we fill in that information. And then when we close a work order, we have other things there, or the project, right? Like the type of work that we completed, and we'll close it out with a date and all that. So yeah, so this is just it at a glance, right? So I've gone ahead and just grabbed a screenshot of this. So I've clicked this node, and it just pops up all of this critical information here, a place to write out any defects. But then if I was just looking around, say in this neighborhood here, this is the Langdon Park area in Portsmouth. These X's here represent trees that have been removed, right? This green tree symbol is a tree that's currently there. This green plus symbol is a proposed planting site. And then this red dot here is a tree that's proposed for removal. So at a glance, you can very clearly see, what this, what the utility is here. It's just super simple and straightforward, really intuitive. And it's important for us to capture all the work that our crew does in a yearly basis. before, the only work orders that we completed were those that had a see-click fix or a ViewWorks job associated with it. But when we go out to sites, we'll prune a tree or two and then look across the street and see that this other tree needs something. So we, yeah, it's a great way to just capture all of our work. And finally, I'll just run through this really quickly from some lessons learned for our 400 trees for 400 years back in 2023. We had given away, I'm just going to skip to this next slide here. So we had given away about 200 container trees at the Urban Forestry Center, which is a state-run facility. And it was a great way to interface with over 500 residents. It was awesome. People were really excited to be a part of that, you know, like a little piece of local history, right? But we taught them how to properly plant trees and taught them more about our urban forestry program and gave out plenty of business cards. So great event. And then the Arbor Day planting wasn't as successful. And the biggest lesson that I learned, again, kind of thinking about community, right, is that it was with the Portsmouth High School Eco Club. And I tried to make this more of a public works Arbor Day, as opposed to kind of leaning more into their interest. And so the takeaway is, if you have somebody that wants to do some kind of project with you, allow them to be sort of the point person on it. And you kind of, you know, take a step back, just play a supporting role, help them with logistics, help them with all that stuff. But those people will more likely be interested in the proper execution of it and really see it through to the end, as opposed to, you know, me trying to make it more about us and the things we do. Make it about your community, make it something that they can own and be happy with the results of. And with that, sorry it took so long, but that is it for me. If you have any questions or comments, this is my contact information. I'd be more than happy to talk about anything here today offline, or if there are any questions afterward as well.
Max, thank you so much. Lots of great information. And I failed to add that I believe you all were just recognized for the 26th year in a row by the Arbor Day Foundation as Tree City USA. So congratulations. Thanks for
Thank
sharing
you.
all that wonderful information.
Absolutely.
And Max, if you can hang out, we do have a question in the chat pod we'll get to at the end, unless you chime in. Meanwhile, we're going to bring Kelly up and hear what's happening in Manchester.
Hey, morning all. I'm Kelly Coates here, Parks Operations Manager with the City of Manchester, New Hampshire, Parks, Recreation, and Cemetery. I've got a background in forestry from the University of Vermont. I've been working in the field of arboriculture for close to 20 years. I've been a certified arborist for over 15 of those. And my career has taken me from the East Coast to the West Coast, back to the East Coast. So with a large part of it dedicated to urban forest. I'm really excited about this project we got going on, and to be part of this presentation today. The federal government, through the Inflation Reduction Act, we were awarded grant funding for the City of Manchester's Urban Forest Equity Planning and Implementation Project, which we're going to be presenting on today. As part of the project, the city has partnered with a great group of local organizations, which has included a project management group through Beta Incorporated, community outreach, and education with the Conservation Law Foundation, grant guidance and support from the Nature Conservancy, and contractor assistance from several contractors such as Planet Geo and Airworks. As part of our project management team from Beta to help present on our current phase 1 data collection and progress and our next steps, we have Emily Slotnick. Emily is Beta's Climate Resilience Manager. She is an AICP certified planner and floodplain manager. She has nearly 20 years of experience in community planning. She is leading the forest equity component of our project. Along with her is Tito Sanchez from Beta Inc. as well. Tito is Beta's GIS manager. He's a certified GIS professional with over 20 years of experience as well. He is managing the project. He's overseeing both phases, coordinating closely with me and the others over here at the City of Manchester, and helping us develop our urban forestry equity plan. And then as well, we've got Russell Clark presenting from Planet Geo, based on some inventory and data collection that his group did. Russell is the account executive for Planet Geo for New England and New York. He's native to Connecticut. He has worked around the US on various urban forestry projects and now helps share that knowledge with new and existing customers. He's a certified arborist, qualified tree risk assessor, and a Society of American Foresters urban and community forester. I'll now turn it over to Emily with Beta to start our presentation.
Thanks, Kelly. Hi, everyone. So the objective of our project is to develop an urban forestry plan for the city of Manchester that's really focused on disadvantaged areas to ensure an equitable access to the benefits of the urban tree canopy. Kelly talked about the funding source. The timeline of the project is going to be 5 years with the phased implementation process to ensure that steady progress and measurable outcomes. We are in phase 1, which is the citywide tree assessment and inventory. That includes the on-the-ground assessment that we have completed and the inventory of trees. That includes looking at existing trees as well as potential planting sites. And then the phase 2 is where we get boots on the ground. We will be looking at creating a tree ambassadors to help out with tree planting. We'll be acquiring trees and also planting trees, excuse me. And then ongoing support for the city. Next slide, please. So in Manchester, like a lot of other New England cities and cities in the world, we're grappling with things like urban heat islands, air pollution, rising temperatures due to climate change, a host of other environmental concerns. And these issues act as threat multipliers. They disproportionately affect residents that are already struggling with poor health or limited financial resources or inadequate access to green space. And so our project is looking at expanding the urban tree canopy as a solution to some of those existing burdens with several benefits. Maxwell talked about some of these in his presentation, like reducing temperatures and cooling costs or managing stormwater and improving air quality, slowing traffic, et cetera. So a healthy urban forest is going to improve community resilience to the stressors and the burdens that I just discussed. And then planning for urban forest equity means looking at tree distribution and identifying the most disadvantaged areas, or those areas that are lacking in trees and other resources, where increasing the canopy can provide the greatest benefits. Next slide. So I'm a planner, and with any planning endeavor, it's important that we understand the context within which our project exists. Our partners at the Conservation Law Foundation, who are leading the community engagement aspect of this project, provided survey data that shows disadvantaged Manchester residents are really facing a range of challenges, from hunger and access to food, to transportation safety, to lacking access to open space and clean air. And as you can see just on this very basic graph, a large portion of survey respondents noted lack of access to green space as a major concern, and just below that, air pollution also scored high. Next slide. Generally speaking, access to green space and tree canopy is greater in affluent neighborhoods. In Manchester, excuse me, the difference between a street with a high density tree cover and a low density tree cover is pretty stark, and it's often predictive of historic disinvestment in certain neighborhoods. So the photos above are of 2 locations in Manchester. They're both on Maple Street, which runs from the north end of the city near a large park through downtown, down to the Bakersville neighborhood. I just wanted to do a little thought exercise with everyone of the 2 locations above. Which one would you rather take a walk in? All right, which one would you rather be waiting for a bus on a hot summer day on? Okay, now if you have children and your neighborhood school, which street would you rather have your kid ride their bike to school on? So I think we're probably all in agreement that the neighborhood to the left seems cooler, probably safer, and just generally more comfortable. And perhaps the greatest difference between these two is just the presence or absence of healthy trees. Next slide. So while our process is looking at the urban forests across the entire city, we do begin by acknowledging that a healthy urban tree canopy is a resource. It's just like any other resource. Also, just like our streets or our sewers or our sidewalks, we need to think about urban trees as infrastructure. And any uneven distribution of a resource, especially a health or environmental resource, and any disinvestment in infrastructure can have cascading impacts for communities that are underserved. So the same uneven distribution of resources is what led to the environmental justice movement, which is seeking to protect the right to a clean and livable environment for all people. And we're extrapolating that into the urban forest context. Next slide. One of our project goals is to identify priority tree planting sites. You'll hear more about that from Russell and Planet Geo's field process to identify thousands of potential sites that are suitable for planting new trees. So laying out the framework for prioritizing which of those sites would most benefit the city's disadvantaged communities is a critical component of the early planning process. In addition to our own data collection, we use third-party tools like the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool from the Council on Environmental Quality, also iTreeEco from the Forest Service, and the Tree Equity Explorer by American Forests. These are tools that use census data and other data sets to identify communities that are disadvantaged by multiple burdens. The Tree Equity Explorer, which is what's shown here, is focusing specifically on environmental inequities, which is what we're focused on in our project. The tool illustrates that the lowest percentages of urban tree canopy cover are correlated with areas that are designated as environmental justice communities. And then it creates a tree equity score between 0 and 100 that sort of helps us understand how equitable that canopy distribution is. So the image here shows that 30 of the 95 census block groups in Manchester have a tree equity score below 75. And the majority of those block groups that are below 75 and that are on the lower end of that are concentrated in the center city area, excuse me, where you also see the greatest concentrations of minorities and of people living in poverty. Next slide. Another way to think about distribution and equity is by looking at heat. Urban extreme heat is one of the most significant risks facing disadvantaged communities in Manchester. And that risk is disproportionately higher in areas lacking in tree canopy. So the USGS Landsat is a data layer that measures the Earth's surface temperature, and it can provide a really useful visual of urban heat. The image we're looking at here is showing the distribution of heat in a portion of downtown Manchester this past summer, July 19th in 2024. So surface temperature readings in the parts of the map that are the darker red usually correspond with areas of low canopy cover and more development, higher impervious surface coverage, et cetera. And where the little black box is to the bottom right, I took a point sample there, and that was reading at 126 degrees Fahrenheit. Readings in the yellow or orange shaded area, like at Piscataqua Park, where you see a green star over towards the left or the western part of the map, also where tree canopy is higher, were as low as 84 degrees Fahrenheit. So 126 degrees on the right side of your screen and 84 on the left side of your screen. So that heat disparity is what we use to talk about that. It's another criteria we can use to prioritize planting sites across the city. Next slide. So with all of these factors at play, it's really critical that the plan that we're developing and its recommendations are reflective of community needs and priorities, because there are so many factors that we could take into consideration talking about equity and tree canopy. So among several engagement efforts, our partners at the Nature Conservancy have held some neighborhood workshops to engage a dialogue around access to nature and extreme heat and flooding. And the Conservation Law Foundation is going to be working with an advisory group of community stakeholders from these disadvantaged neighborhoods to guide the project implementation, also to validate the planning team's findings on stressors, environmental stressors of concern. And lastly, to serve as a conduit for community input on implementation options. Again, some of the things that Maxwell mentioned earlier, talking to community about, like, are there specific preferences in the types of trees? Do you want flowering trees or not flowering trees? What size of tree is appropriate for your neighborhood or the right of way in front of your yard, et cetera. These are really important things to the long-term success of a tree health and tree planting program. So it's important that we hear those up front. The city is also going to be hiring tree ambassadors for phase 2 to support tree planting, community coordination, and also long-term maintenance. And with that, I will turn it over to Tito. So Tito and Russell can tell you more about the data collection process.
Great. Thank you so much, Emily. So gathering tree data can be a daunting task, which is why Beta partnered with companies like Planet Geo and Airworks to assist with the field data collection and also to identify tree canopy coverage across the city. So our collaboration with Airworks led to the development of a GIS-based polygon layer that mapped the tree canopy coverage citywide. The data provided to be critical, enabling our planners to identify potential planting sites, and also highlights disparities in canopy coverage between EJ areas, the environmental justice areas, and other parts of the cities as well. The canopy assessment was conducted using high-resolution aerial imagery. Leveraging machine learning and AI, Airworks was able to generate detailed polygons representing the tree crowns that you're seeing here on the screen throughout the entire city. It took them about 6.5 hours to process the entire data set, which is really remarkable. Russell's going to be discussing the tree data collection methodology on the next slide, including how Planet Geo conducted a comprehensive inventory and assessment. I want to emphasize the fact that this information was critical to our analysis and also played a key role in developing a well-informed urban forestry equity plan. The map shown here is just a small sample of the data collected within the environmental justice area. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Russell, and he's going to talk about the field data collection methodology.
Thanks, Tito. Hello, everyone. Russell Clark from Planet Geo. We provided 2 things for this project. One was a tree inventory service where our certified arborists went out into the field and collected individual trees as well as many planting sites. The other thing we provided is an off-the-shelf tree inventory software. This one has been optimized for tree data collection and managing the database after the inventory is done. As Maxwell said, inventories are living, breathing things. Once you do the data collection, now you get to understand a little bit more about what you have and the distribution of trees, the health, the condition, and where you have potential planting sites as well. So you can hit the next slide there, Tito. All right. So all data was collected in our browser-based software, Tree Plotter. Our arborists are familiar with it, so they are going to be out there and collecting it in our software, which makes it quick, reliable. We're familiar with it. We can optimize it, and then we know how to do our own quality assurance on making sure we collected all the relevant data fields. The other thing we can do is upload boundaries. So we can get the city boundary, we can get parcel boundaries in there, center line setbacks, and this is helpful for our arborists in the field so they can make sure that they're collecting the trees. In a lot of parts of New England, the setback is into people's front yards. And so if we can approach them about planting a tree and shared maintenance, then that can be a case in many cities. So the arborists went out. This took a few months, several months actually. We were in fall 2024 into just this year. Not doing a lot of collection in the winter months, but as the spring comes up, finish up the data collection. So they're getting species, condition, diameter, primary maintenance needs, the pruning type, hardscape damage, overhead utilities, everything Kelly's going to need to manage the trees afterwards. And then we did also collect a lot of planting sites. So we found small, medium, and large. site widths there indicating what size of a tree, but also how much space there is. We were following industry standards on that with a minimum of 3 foot if we can get a planting site there. For this project, we were very liberal with collecting planting sites in the sea-just areas, and we also plotted some trees in people's front yards that would be a good location for trees. Next slide. So by the numbers, 29,551 total trees collected, which is an incredible amount. We also had at the bottom 9,921 proposed planting sites. Just goes to show you how many you can find in a community. And this was street opportunities and front yards as well. 441 dead trees identified, 197 stumps, and 242 species, including this very unique tree, an eastern wahoo. Our crew found this on this hill here. It's typically a deciduous shrub, and this one happens to be only a few inches shy of the national champion. So an incredible finding that I'm sure no one was really aware of before. So finding these trees, maybe making a case for preservation, retaining, and maybe someday this might be the national champion located in Manchester. Next slide. So I want to actually talk about this one as well. This happens to be the largest street tree in Manchester, and it's in a pretty precarious location. It's along this back street. It seems to be right adjacent to private property, probably multifamily. So there's probably some significant pressure actually on this tree to maybe be removed. Maybe the adjacent homeowner is not comfortable with liability and would want to remove this. So the largest street tree we found in the entire city is something that could be removed. Like Emily was talking about, a thought experiment, what would you do as a public works director or as a city planner to preserve this? My thought is this street necessary? Could it be turned into a sidewalk and then this area turned into a pocket park? Maybe that adjacent homeowner would love to unload the liability of that tree or that grassy area and maintenance, and this could serve a double duty, right? It's preserving large shade canopy, it's adding park space to another area, and then potentially more planting sites as well to increase canopy cover in this area. That's it for me, Tito. I'll hand it back to you.
You're muted, Tito.
Oh, thank you very much. So it's important to note that all of this is being guided by an equity analysis. Beta will lead the expert level data analysis and will have already identified areas of greatest need from an environmental justice perspective. There are a couple of components to developing an urban forest equity plan. First things first is findings from the tree inventory and canopy assessment, of course, are critical to the project. So combining the tree inventory and the tree canopy data will enable for identifying potential planting locations, as well as trees that may need to be removed due to poor condition, hazardous structure, or disease. This data will also support the development of a citywide tree maintenance pruning plan. And this is all incorporated with the potential planting sites that Russell and his team had also gathered out there. Strategic planting and maintenance guidelines. So Beta's landscape architecture group will play a critical role in the project. By analyzing the field data, they'll be able to pinpoint the areas throughout the city where new trees can be planted, along with the stuff that the potential planting sites that Planet Geo came up with. And the analysis will also guide with species selection as well, allowing the team to recommend tree types based on existing species in these specific neighborhoods. Of course, we want to talk a little bit about phase 2. So everything that we had discussed up to this point is mostly focused on phase 1, which is the inventory and assessment, and then generating the urban forest equity plan for the city. Phase 2 is going to be starting up this year. It's an ambitious program to expand canopy cover by planting more trees, which must be supported by an equally ambitious effort to sustain these trees throughout their lifetime. So key threats to the longevity and sustainability of the urban forest include development, drought, climate change, stuff that Emily had talked about before, soil compaction, and other challenges. And the thriving urban forests require human stewardship, ongoing support, and deliberate management. So goals of implementation strategy is to achieve the vision of a robust urban forest, A clear roadmap will be developed that includes close collaboration with the Conservation Law Foundation and the Nature Conservancy. The plan will offer a framework for city departments to effectively manage and maintain their urban forest resources. It'll take the form of a tree management plan developed in partnership with the city and selected contractors. Beta will oversee the implementation phase, monitoring and managing the project over the next 4 years. This oversight will ensure accurate tracking of tree planting locations and will help verify the proper maintenance is being performed, supporting the long-term success and sustainability of the city's urban forestry efforts. So there's a couple of quantitative goals and social and economic benefits to this whole plan, which impacts the projects. Of course, we want to increase tree canopy coverage in the EJ areas. The project aims to significantly expand tree canopy in neighborhoods with low coverage. This effort directly addresses inequities in green infrastructure, ensuring that all residents, especially those in EJ communities, have access to the benefits of urban forests. Improves air quality, of course. So trees act as natural air filters, as we know, by absorbing pollutants such as carbon monoxide, ozone, and particulate matter. Expanding the canopy will help reduce respiratory health issues, as Emily alluded to before, particularly in the EJ areas located near industrial zones or high traffic corridors. And of course, Emily mentioned before the reduction of urban heat islands, which is going to be critical in these particular areas as well. As far as social and economic benefits goes, there will be job creation. Expanding and maintaining the urban forest will generate local jobs in arboriculture, landscaping, and urban forestry. Training programs will be developed with a focus on empowering EJ community residents to fill these roles and contribute to the project's long-term success. Urban forests also support both physical and mental health. Trees reduce pollutants linked to asthma and cardiovascular disease, while green spaces encourage physical activity and offer calming environments that help reduce stress. And for economic growth, the trees and green infrastructure are proven to raise property values, attract businesses, and boost local economies as well. They also reduce municipal costs by mitigating stormwater runoff, lowering energy demand, and protecting infrastructure through shading and temperature regulation. As far as the long-term vision goals go, the project aims to establish a sustainable, interconnected network of green spaces, tree corridors, and urban forests that protect and enhance the city's natural assets, streams, floodplains, habitats, and wildlife corridors as well. This vision supports a healthier, more resilient Manchester, where every resident benefits from a thriving urban forest. The Urban Forest Equity Planning Project is first of its kind. It's a collaboration between the city, Beta Group, the Nature Conservancy, and the Conservation Law Foundation. And together we're creating a holistic long-term plan that'll benefit the entire city with a particular focus on the environmental justice areas. As I mentioned, phase 1 of the project is nearing completion. We've conducted the field data collection, completed the tree canopy analysis, and are currently developing the draft urban forest equity plan. Utilizing the data that has been collected, Beta will host a public meeting with the city and its residents to review the information and gather feedback that will then feed into the plan later on. Meanwhile, in phase 2, which is already underway, Beta is working closely with Kelly and the Parks and Rec division to begin purchasing trees and coordinating with the tree ambassadors to identify priority planting areas. And looking ahead, Beta will continue to work with the city, the Nature Conservancy, and the Conservation Law Foundation to monitor and guide the implementation of the maintenance plan, ensuring this vision becomes a long-lasting reality for Manchester's urban forest. And with that, I will hand it back and see if we can get into a Q&A session.
Excellent. Tito and Kelly and Emily and Russell, thank you so much for that great information. It'll be exciting to see how that project unfolds. We've got just a few minutes left, so I know we had one question in the chat pod that looks like Max has answered regarding the storage of the bare root tree, so thank you for that. And then we did have a question on Silva cells for street planting, and I'm not sure, I think that might be directed towards the Manchester project team. Did you consider Silva cells for street planting? Oh, and Max has already responded on Portsmouth's behalf. I don't know if Kelly, you want to chime into that, or Tito?
Yeah, I'll let Kelly answer this.
Silver cells are a great option when some major infrastructure improvements are occurring. If they you kind of need to pull out the hardscape and it gets built in underneath, allowing for more root space and less damage in the future. So when applicable, they're an awesome option. Doesn't necessarily always apply, but if a capital improvement or a building project's going on, they're a great direction to look at.
Excellent.
So possibly Portsmouth is looking at that with their downtown example.
Super. Thank you so much, Kelly. I'm not immediately seeing any other questions. And I know, Regina, I want to kick it over to you because we're down to just a couple of minutes and maybe we'll see if a question comes in, but you've got some wrap up things. Thank you all again.
No, I just put the link. We would really love, we do, we're so sorry. We would really love your feedback about today's webinar and also for future webinars. So if you can either click on the link in the chat box or scan the QR code on your screen, that would be wonderful. We really love hearing from you. And also I put in another link to register for the May 29th Public Works Advocacy and Visibility Be a Voice session next month.
Excellent. Thank you, Regina. All right. I don't see any other questions. So I will say thank you so much to all of today's presenters. We hope you all have a wonderful Arbor Day and a very safe and happy spring. And thanks for joining us. Thank you for being here for New England APWA's Chapter Connects. Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.